What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, folks? Welcome to the Birdcage on the Perch interview segment. We got a hot one for you tonight. Got the winningest coach in Atlanta football history for the Falcons. We got him in here tonight. But before we can present him to you, go ahead and hit that like and that subscribe button for us. This is how you know it's special. I put on a collar shirt for you guys tonight. I had to get a little spiffy. I can't just look unpresentable in front of one of the greatest coaches we've had in our history. So sit back, relax, and don't touch that dial. But the only thing I want you to touch is that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. We in here tonight. Let's go.
Okay, y'all, this is it.
It's official like a referee with a whistle. You in the Birdcage with your boy, the historian. But before we bring everybody else in here, hit that like and subscribe button for us, please. We definitely appreciate it. And like I said, we're having some slight technical difficulties on Facebook. We're getting that squared away. But while we're getting that squared away, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the magnificent Birdcage crew. We got Coach Brant and Coach Cam into the building. What's going on, fellas?
Good evening.
What's going
How
on
you
there,
feeling?
everybody?
Man, what's going on? Y'all ready for this interview tonight?
I'm
Oh,
very excited.
super excited.
Very, very excited. I'm ready to do it.
Man, all I know is, man, let's just go ahead and do this thing. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in the legendary Atlanta Falcons winningest coach of all time. We have Mr. Mike Smith in the building. Welcome, Coach. How you doing?
Oh, God. Great. I hope
Coach?
you guys are ready to chop it up. I'm excited about talking about some football tonight.
Most definitely, most definitely.
Sir.
We're going to talk a little bit about football tonight, but we also want to talk a little bit about you as well. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. Most folks that have probably read the Wikipedia know you're a Florida boy. We're real. Daytona, Florida, home of Bethune-Cookman University, Daytona 500. It's so many beautiful things that you guys have there, the beach and the weather, but also good football. And you guys have great football, and you guys produced one of the best coaches of all time in our history. So, welcome.
Well, like I said, I'm glad to be here. It's going to be a fun evening chopping it up with you guys to talk some ball about what's going on with the Falcons and what's going on in our world. Just anxious to sit down and visit with you guys.
Most definitely. So let's go ahead and get it started. So you were born in Chicago, raised in Daytona. What got you into football around the Florida area, and what pretty much prompted you to fall in love with the game and put you in a position to play and fall in love with coaching?
Well, I'm a son of a coach. My dad was a junior high coach, and I used to go to practice and hang out with him since I was 5 years old. I stood on the sideline of Seabreeze Junior High School in Daytona Beach, and I was the kid that got thrown in the shower and taken advantage of when I was 5 and 6 years old. And back then they didn't have laws about riding in the back of a pickup truck, and then we lived up on the peninsula, and shoot, my dad would bring all the kids, all the team home every night. We'd pack in the back of that truck, and some of you older guys that are here tonight, you'll understand. We'd ride up A1A right there on the beach, and the guys would get dropped off the top of the street when it was football season. And so I've been in the locker room since age 5, and fell in love with coaching early on. I was drawing X's and O's and stuff like that. My teachers would say, no, we're supposed to be working on our ABCs, not just X's and O's. When I was in first and second grade, I just wanted to be like all those seventh and eighth graders that my dad was coaching.
You slipped in. That's an A gap, D gap, and C gap, right?
That's right. The ABCs. Yes, sir. Yeah,
man.
So, I had a great opportunity to go to play college football, and I got injured in my sophomore season and missed it, and I wasn't going to be able to play the next season. So they allowed me to become a student coach. So that was my first college experience. When I was a sophomore, I just hung around, and when I wasn't in class, I was over there in the coach's office doing whatever I could possibly do. And then I got cleared to play the next year and played the 3 more seasons, and then had a chance to go play in the Canadian Football League. And I got a funny story, that happened. I was up in Winnipeg, and back then in 82, 83, if you weren't one of the top 15 Americans, you weren't going to make the team. They had to have Canadian guys, and I had an opportunity to be a coach. So I went to Coach Ray Yock, the legendary coach up there in Winnipeg. And I said, Coach, I need to talk to you, because they wanted me to come back and be on their taxi squad. And I had heard if you were on the taxi squad, once they started cutting in the NFL, they were going to cut you. So these guys were telling me, hey, you don't want to do that. So I went to Coach Yock and said, Coach, I said, I really have a great opportunity to be a graduate assistant at San Diego State. And I want you to be honest with me. Do I have a chance to be a professional football player? And Coach Yock, he was one of them old school guys. He looked up over the top of his glasses and he said, son, you need to go coach.
Yep.
So that's how I got into college coaching. I had an opportunity to go to San Diego State as a GA, and 2 years later I was the linebacker coach and met Brian Billick, and Brian Billick and I actually married sisters. He introduced me to his sister-in-law, and 18 years later, he tried to get me to come to coach with him in Minnesota with Denny Green, and I had a good job, and my wife had a great job, so we kept saying, no, we're just going to stay here at Tennessee Tech and do what we're doing. And so Brian gets the head job at the Ravens, and he says, look, dude, this is the last time I'm asking you. Do you want to come and coach with us here in Baltimore? And I said, yep, I'm coming, Brian. Julie's selling her business. We're coming. Let's go do it. And second year we're there, we win a Super Bowl. And I thought, man, this is easy. But boy, did I find out it wasn't.
So you talked about your Baltimore days. And most folks don't know, Coach is a 2-time MVP in college as a linebacker. By the way, he's a defense. Let me make sure I put that clear for you, Brent. This is a defensive man on here. We finally got us a defensive guy on here.
Yeah.
I'm a free safety. I can't do nothing without my linebacker. Thank you. We got a
I respect
linebacker.
that.
We've had a running back. We've had a running back on here. We've had offensive linemen on here. We finally got a defensive player. Thank God.
I need to
And
raise
he's
my
a
hand.
Falcon.
I need to raise my hand. Coach Smith, can you please get Coach Billick to come on so that teams will be even? So Coach Billick and I can talk offense. I'm just saying, please.
Hey man, you already had 2 Hall of Fame players in here that were offensive linemen,
I
Larry
know
Little and Dwight Stevenson. Come on, man.
Well,
You
man,
you know it,
Yeah.
but Coach understands where I'm coming from. On
I
that.
know.
'Cause
Hey,
it's the last one with the pencil wins.
that's right. And it's funny when you're an offensive or defensive coach, you're just so focused, and then boy, do things change when you become the head coach, and you've got to walk very carefully down that line in terms of, well, I want to make sure we got all these defensive players, but in the NFL, you got to have a quarterback, and believe me, that's where we were going to go back in 2008 in the draft. We were going to go quarterback. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I know we'll talk about that, but it changes your whole perspective as you become and have an opportunity to be a head football coach.
I completely agree with you. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask one more question, and I'm gonna let my guys jump on because we like to rotate with questions. Now you spoke about the time that you were in Baltimore. Now you were there with some of the greatest players on that team. Now Uncle Shannon Sharp wouldn't have had that start if my godfather Clarence K wouldn't have got hurt in Denver. That was how he got his start. Like they say, you get hurt, you might not get your job back. And Uncle Shay was a hell of a tight end. So shout out to Shannon Sharp. But you had Uncle Shay, you had Mr. Woodson playing in the secondary.
Yep.
You had Big Play Ray at middle linebacker. And you had Tony Saragusa, God rest his soul. A lot of people really don't see the impact that man had on that defensive line. You had Peter Bullware and you had Dwayne Starks. You had so many great players on that defense. And even though I was a Falcons fan, I grew up around Jacksonville, Florida, from Atlanta, but grew up around Jax. I got to watch, Ray Lewis when he was at Miami. Got to watch Starks when he was at Miami and some of those guys. And I'm a dog fan, but man, I just love the way that y'all played defense, and it can't be replicated. The 70s, the Grits Blitz defense will always be in our hearts the best of all time because they got the numbers for it. They just didn't get a ring. But watching that defense just go to work was just beautiful.
Yeah.
What was it like day in and day out coaching these legendary players that a lot of us, myself, I grew up trying to idolize and be like those guys playing? What was it like being around those guys and the competitive nature that you had with the Ravens at that time?
Well, that group of men, they were not only very smart football players, but they were tough. I'm telling you, it was the toughest group that I've ever been around. And it was my first year as a position coach in the NFL. I was coaching Ray Lewis, and really Ray was coaching me, to be quite frank. I could not wait until Ray would come in on Wednesdays. We had Tuesdays are off in the NFL. Mondays we'd have Victory Monday. Ray would have those guys over on the day off at his house watching tape. And I couldn't wait till Wednesday morning when he'd come and say, "Hey, Smitty, here's a few things that I saw, on the tape." And, he was a coach on the field, and you put other Pro Bowlers around him, like Rod Woodson, Peter Bullware, and you missed on a guy, Michael McCrary. I mean, he was a dog. Now he'd get after coming off the edge, opposite of Peter, and we just had from top to bottom an unbelievable group of guys. And they willed themselves to the Super Bowl that year because we went 5 games that year without scoring an offensive touchdown. And to keep that team together, Coach Billick did a great job. But it was Ray, and it was Rod, and it was Tony Saragusa that kept that team together. And I mean, I've got so many fond memories and great stories. That I probably got 20 Saragusa things. We could stay here till midnight talking about
Yeah.
Tony Saragusa.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that because God rest his soul. He was such a fine man. People didn't realize what a good man he was.
Okay, Cam, what you got?
Coach Smith, it's a pleasure speaking with you tonight. We all know that you played football at Tennessee Tech. When you played, what drew you to what drew you to the position, and then two, what were your who was someone that pushed you on the field to get you to be a lot better than what you were when you first got there?
Well, I chose to go to East Tennessee State because it was really it was between East Tennessee State and West Point. And my dad wanted me in the worst way to accept that opportunity to go to West Point. Is probably the biggest argument that we ever had. But I had an opportunity to go to East Tennessee State. And I am a guy that played linebacker and was a wishbone fullback. So I didn't get a whole lot of carries. We had some guys that did some really good things in the HBCU in the same backfield with myself. Stacy Charles played at Bethune-Cookman along with Randy Vance, and we had a good group. And I had a great opportunity to go to East Tennessee. And my dad and I, like I said, it was probably the worst disagreement we'd ever had. He wanted me to attend West Point, but I learned a lot. I was very fortunate. Mike Hennigan, who played 11 years in the NFL, was his first year out of playing, wanted to coach, came and coached the linebackers at East Tennessee State, and he coached me, and I learned a lot from him. But when you're a football junkie, you're just obsessed with taking a pencil and listening to what people are saying and trying to figure out how you're going to outnumber somebody at the point of attack on the offensive side, and how you're going to try to have one more than they've got on the defensive side. And if you talk the true football sense going on right now in the NFL with all these quarterbacks, it used to be 11 on 10. Now it's 11 on 11 with these quarterbacks that run the football. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're seeing different in the NFL over the last 5 to 6 years.
Okay. And then with your time with Atlanta, I know coaches aren't supposed to say that they have favorite players or anything like that. But during your time with the Falcons, who was your quote unquote favorite player? If you can
I can't, guys ask me that all the time. And I've got favorites, and the great thing about it is they're all different. And when I was in Baltimore, I had my favorites, and they were the leaders of the team. And in Atlanta, it was the same way. And it's really interesting because it's the makeup of the player that's different. For example, Matt Ryan was a great leader, and he was a great leader from day one. When we drafted him, we thought, okay, we're gonna bring him along slowly. We went out and got Michael Turner, and to help him, we're going to run the ball. We said if we ran it 25 times a game, we were going to win because Michael, we knew Michael could do it. But Matt proved on his very first pass. I saw the defense. We decided we were going to throw a bomb at an X post to Michael Jenkins on his very first play, and it's a 46-yard touchdown. And Matt took over that team instantly, and his style of leadership is different than Tony Gonzalez. We bring Tony in as a free agent, and Tony is 180 degrees different than Matt in the style of leadership. And that's the great thing about football is there's no right or wrong way to be successful in football. And it's important in the leadership role. So, Tony led by just going out there and playing. I tell the story a lot about Tony is, when we traded for him, he came to mini camp, and I'm sitting out there in Flower Branch, and it's 20 minutes before practice is supposed to start. And I look out there, and Tony's out there catching balls. He's got a guy flinging them. He got somebody from the training or the equipment room. He's catching balls. I mean, he probably caught 100 in a row. And I watched it for 3 or 4 days. And then finally, the last day of the little mini camp, I said, Tony, I said, what are you doing? I said, why are you out there 25 minutes before? He said, Coach, when I was a rookie, I had 4 drops. And he said, after that, I was going to do everything in my power to never drop a pass again. And that's the way he approached what he felt like he needed to do. And what happened is when we came back for spring, fall ball practice, when we opened training camp, I look out there. Not only is Tony out there, the next day, Roddy White's out there. Then there's Michael Jenkins out there. There's Harry Douglas out there. And gosh, we don't even have to do individual because the whole team was going out early because Tony Gonzalez was. And that was his way of his leadership style. He did it by his actions, not his words. And I think in football, we all see different types of guys and how they lead. And that's, that was so important for us. And that's why I think we turned it around and we were so successful through those early years.
Okay.
I hope that answered your question, and there's some other guys that, on that team, you had Todd McClure, who was a holdover from the regime before me. And he was great. But they all have, we all know that we all have different styles, but you've got to mesh that group together. And lots of times, if you let it happen organically and not try to force it, and that's basically what I've always believed is, hey, evaluate, but don't try to mess it up. Let this thing happen naturally. And it just grew. It grew in that first season. And then, the second season, it was easier. And the third season, it was easier. And then, it worked for a while, and, it didn't happen the last 2 years like it needed to for me to keep my job. That's football.
So before we get to the next question, I got to shout out some of the content creators that have slid through. Shout out to On the Mark. Shout out to our guy, the Dixon Way, Larry Dixon, for his commentary. He does his thing. We have also in the building 95 North Sports. My guy Berto, and then you also have A1 Forever, Chris, and you got Smitty Smith that came through the building as well. So we have some of the content creators that have come through here and have showed some love tonight to check out this interview. So thank you guys for coming through. You guys always promote us, so we want to make sure that we put you guys out there too as well. So thank you guys for coming through. So, Coach, what you got for Coach Smith?
All right, Coach, good speaking with you tonight, obviously. I want to get into a little bit of the coaching aspect of it. So I know you were talking about the Ravens team and you coming in as a position coach with the linebackers, and your defense was so good. And your brother-in-law, Coach Billick, was known as an offensive guy. And so I'm going to take it a step further. When you become a head coach, how difficult is it as a head coach when you have your background to trust somebody else with the other side of the ball and to be involved in it, but to not just you understand the difficulty I'm talking about with that question?
Oh, I do. And I think it's very important that when you put a staff together, you've got to be honest about your knowledge and honest about their knowledge, and then honest about what you perceive it's going to look like. And if you don't agree, then you probably don't need to go down that road. And, so many people hire people that they know. And to be quite frank with you guys, I tried to not do that when I put my first staff together. I had never worked with Mike Mularkey. I'd never spoke to Mike Mularkey. I just admired his work even though they were terrible in Miami as an offensive coordinator, I admired his work because his teams always were tough, and I felt like we needed to be able to run the football at that time, and we were going to do that and let that lead to the passing until we developed Matt Ryan. And I had a good inkling where we were picking, that we had a chance to get a quarterback. In this league, even back then, you got to have a quarterback to win in the NFL. It's the most important position on the field. And, you've got to have an idea and be able to tell the guys that you're hiring, give them parameters about this is how we're going to do it. And Mike and I hit it off just like that. I mean, just like that. And I knew right from the first interview, this was the guy I wanted to hire, even though he wasn't a buddy of mine. And, and I took some heat from some of the guys that I'd coached with, because they all, Smitty, we've been buddies and all that forever. I felt like I had to do it a little different way. I wanted to put a group, the special teams coordinator, Keith Armstrong. I just admired the way his teams played special teams. I always told guys, the tape is your resume, whether you're a player or a coach. What you put on tape is how you're going to be thought of in the National Football League. All the other stuff really doesn't matter. It's really it's a production league. And if you don't produce, you're not going to be a part of it. So that was the way I tried to approach putting my staff together. I could have hired, 3 guys that I worked with from this school. And believe me, it was some hard feelings when I first got the job, because there were a bunch of guys that I think, thought, well, I might have a chance. And, I was honest with them and told them, hey, this is the framework that I want to go through in putting this staff together. And it was, I had a couple of guys, that I had worked with, I think basically 3 or 4, and the rest of them were guys that I hadn't had. But I admired their resumes, and I watched tape a lot. And when you watch tape, you get the feel about what type of team and what type of coach that guy is.
So the question I got. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
It was something when you said quarterback. Now, you talked about drafting Matt Ryan at the time when you came in. Was there pressure that you faced with Vic leaving, and you had a young guy like Matt Ryan coming into Atlanta, and the city was already torn because of what happened.
Yes.
But when Matt came in, he threw his first touchdown. I think people started to say, okay, we might have something. But how much pressure was on Matt in those first few years you were with him? And what did you tell him to keep him at ease when he was going through being the starting quarterback at that time?
Yes. We had conversations. The first time I met Matt was at the Combine, and we went to dinner, just he and I, and we had an opportunity to talk, and I gave him the vision that I had for the Falcons, about how you build a football team and how important the quarterback position is. And from the first time I sat down, I watched all kinds of tape. I mean, I watched every throw that Matt threw in his college career. And, people were saying, well, he's a 52 or 53, 44, 55% completion. But no disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that he was throwing to at Boston College, they weren't going to get into camp anywhere in the NFL. So, you have a vision, and you try to tell them, and you say, and we laid it out, because you don't have a 1-year plan when you're a coach and you're coming in new. You've got to have, okay, this is what we want to try to do in year 1. Here's year 2. Here's year 3. Nowadays, it might be only 2 years in the NFL with that when the way they're firing coaches. But we knew we wanted to come in and give Matt some help around him, and that was with Michael Turner. And I told him, I said, look, if we run the ball 25 times a game, and I told the team, if we run it 25 times a game, we're going to win because we're not going to put it on the quarterback. Well, we learned real quick about fourth game into the season that we had a bona fide potential Pro Bowler, which he turned out to be. And, I would be shocked if he doesn't make it to the Hall of Fame. His career numbers, you can compare him to anybody, but you've got, so things changed, then we decided, with Thomas Dimitroff and myself, Thomas and I, that's when we said, okay, now let's get some weapons for Matt. Let's add to what we have. Let's get Tony Gonzalez as a free agent. Let's draft Julio Jones. Let's get the offense, and put the weapons, because we saw how cerebral he was and how he was a natural leader. You don't fake that. You can't do that. And that you've seen that throughout his career.
And when you look at what he's accomplished in his career, and we all talk about, the Super Bowl run that he had. He was consistent with, just look at it. He was here for 14 years. We literally went on a run with consecutive winning seasons that had never been done in Falcons history, ever. You were the change.
I'm well aware of that, because when I got offered the job, they started talking about, well, how long is this guy going to be here? Because the guy previous to me was didn't last a year. Lasted about 6 games. The guy before that was 2 years. So I knew the history. I tell people, I think that Mr. Blank he had everybody in line, the old story about everybody in line, and says, okay, if you want this job, step forward, and everybody else stepped backwards. And I just stayed where I was standing,
Coach, I've got one thing I want to ask you, and it's an obvious question when people start talking about quarterbacks, because I'm an offensive guy, so I have to ask.
God bless you.
What is the number one trait that you look at in a quarterback to be successful? I know you have to have pieces around them, but one trait that they have, that you look at.
Well, if you're talking about at the NFL, I think you're most of the guys you're going to be looking at, they're going to have a strong arm. They're gonna have an opportunity to throw the football, so you can evaluate that. Nowadays you look at them, okay, can they run a little bit because of the run option that more teams are going. But I think the most important thing is the leadership skills. They've got to understand the importance of team, and they've almost got to be like a head coach. The head coach can't always get in there and talk to every player, and the quarterback that can go in there and he gets buy-in from everybody around him is the most important thing. And I think that's where some guys fail. They don't fail because they're not athletically inclined enough to be an NFL quarterback. It's the mental part of it, and you've got to be, as the quarterback, you've got to be the leader, and you've got to be not only the leader, but you've got to also be a motivator. You also have to be a psychologist, because things happen differently in a huddle than what happens in the meeting rooms. There's no coaches out there in the huddle. You've got to have that, you got to have that guy. And when it's your quarterback, you've got a chance to be successful. And I think that's one of the things that is probably overlooked about Matt Ryan, is his leadership style is very, very unique, because he's an Irish guy. He can get hot, he can get up and hot real quick and run hot, but he can snap right back in it and be, and do what he has to, do what he has to do. And I think that's what people that play with him and have coached, have been coached and been around him, they know what type of leadership skills he has. And he's got a knack for getting in on somebody's butt when they need to, and get on them. And in other times, patting them on the butt and saying, look, we're going to get this, it's okay. We'll get it the next time.
And the one thing you left out, now I don't say this too often because now I live up here. So I understand what it's like to be around folks from Philly. I live here. And, I'm wearing my Falcons and Atlanta, everything around here. But Matt is a Philly guy. That's what a lot of people forget. And honestly, he's not as soft as people think.
No.
Let's just say that. Myles Garrett has confirmed that. And a few people I've talked to are like, nah, do not let the nice guy image fool you.
You're exactly right. He is, and he's Irish, from
I got some of that in my family. My grandmother's maiden name is Kilpatrick. So I'll leave that alone with that one.
But he is, he is a guy that understands the importance of having a leader on the field. And Matt doesn't talk about leadership, and the guys that are really great leaders are the guys that don't talk about it. They just do it. And he did it for a long time. Probably where I've seen him handle it the best is after a loss. I mean, we didn't win them all, but we won a lot of them. But how he dealt with a loss, and he knew which guys needed to be patted on the butt. Okay, come on, let's go. And then he had to have conversations with guys, because you've got to have those things going on to be successful as a team. It can't be coach centric. And some coaches want it to be coach centric, but to me, that's not the model that's going to be successful in the long run. And Matt understood that.
So the gentleman that I have the comment up, I got Coach McGriff is at work right now, but he's watching it. He's got a break. He wanted to tell you thank you. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, that's Coach McGriff telling you thank you for coming on. So shout out to Coach Terry McGriff for setting this up. He's like another godfather to me. I played for him semi-pro before I went to the military, and he really is like a father figure to me. So shout out to Coach McGriff for setting this up. And, again, thank you, Coach, for coming through. But we got to talk about we got to talk about the playoffs before we get to the draft, because this is what most Falcon fans that's in the chat that's been waiting on. Every team that beat us in the playoffs ended up going to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And it's the craziest thing, because I actually was in the service around the time we started getting close, and I was stationed in Portsmouth, New Hampshire at the time when we lost to Frisco, and I ended up having to go to Petaluma, California, Coach, and that's not that far from San Francisco. That's right over there by Oakland and Frisco. So I had my Falcons gear out there. This is after that loss, so I was living amongst 49er fans for 6 months. I'll be honest with you. I had to walk away a few times because I probably would have messed up my pension, or my DD-214 would have got jacked up. And for my veterans, what a DD-214 does, that controls your life. I had to walk out of a few situations. I'll just keep it clean for the show. But what is it really telling when you see that every team that we've lost to ended up going to the Super Bowl? The Giants won theirs, and the Packers won theirs, but everybody else, the Cardinals and the 49ers, lost theirs. Do you think if we possibly could have done a few things differently in those games, the outcome would have been a little different, with us having a good shot of winning a championship with you here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that you point that out in terms of, the four losses that we had. All those teams went to the Super Bowl. So I take full responsibility because I'm the buck stops with me. That San Francisco game, it was, we had a lead, 17-7 lead. And, there were some calls that went, but those calls, you can't sit there and say, okay, that call was the difference. You've got to, you got to take responsibility. And yes, I would have every one of those games that we lost, but it doesn't matter if it's the playoffs or the regular season or preseason. To be quite frank with you, as a coach, you're going to evaluate what we could have done differently. And you always come up with a list, and you've got to be realistic. And, if we could have made a play here or there, if we don't drop a pass, or we got a roughing the passer call on, that, man, my 7-year-old daughter at that time couldn't have hit the quarterback, would have hit the quarterback harder than Cliff Matthews hit him.
We got hosed in that. I'm gonna say it. You don't have to say it. I'm gonna say it for you. And I'm a former DB, and most of the time I'm okay with DBs getting away with a little tug on the jersey here and there. I'm okay with that. But Roddy White was freaking. Let's just say this here. That dude, that guy that was hanging on Roddy White was draped over him like a flag over a fallen soldier's coffin. That was how tight he was.
I was in the end zone. I was at that game, and I'm still sick over that.
But you know what, Coach? I'm not. And here's my thing. I'm appreciative of what you brought to me during my lifetime. I've been a fan since 1991. Coach has been a fan since the days of William Andrews, and so is Coach Pam. And my grandfather, he's 82. He's been a Falcons fan since 1966 when the team came to the city. So he's dealt with everything. And he said, I'm watching them, I'm rooting for him, but he said that Super Bowl that we just lost, he said, I'm 82 years old. He said, I'm too old. I've given them my soul for over 40 years. And he said, if they win one, he said, I might be dead and gone. But he said, just pour some champagne on my gravesite for me to let me know that we won one.
Yeah, so, that's a true fan. And fans are short for fanatics. That's what a fan means. And I do want to mention that there was a lot of other people outside of that locker room that had a hand in the success that we were able to have, especially those first 5 years. And one is Thomas Dimitroff. We worked together very, very well, and we put together a team that for 5 years was the top, the talk of the NFL. So he was good, and the support staff was just fantastic. Ron Medlin was our athletic trainer. We had a great group of people that worked in the cafeteria, the support staff, and that's what makes a team. And I know some coaches don't believe that way. They want to keep them separate. When I got in there, one of the first things that I did is, it used to be the players ate at one time and the rest of the staff ate at another time. And I said, no, that's not the way we're going to do this. Said, we're a team. They're a very, 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 very important part of the team. Mm-hmm. And especially in year one, which was a tough time, it was a tough transition. You remember when Michael wasn't coming back, we lost 30% of our fan base, maybe even more. People, they were crushed. And, luckily Matt threw that first touchdown, and we got people coming, getting them excited in year one, game one. But, the people that sell tickets, you're a family. When you're a team, that's the one thing. It's not corporate. It really isn't. The way you've got to operate is everybody is going to be someone that helps us win football games, even though you're not technically in the football realm, but you're doing promotions, you're selling tickets. And I told people when I first got there, I bring them to my office and I said, look, I know your job is to sell tickets. I know it's tough. What can I do to help you? And we went out and we did like caravans, like colleges do. And we went out and talked to the people in the community, talking about what this future was going to look like. Because remember, when it wasn't only Michael Vick, that's when we had to let Bob Whitfield go.
Yep.
You know, and probably one of the hardest conversations I ever had was telling Warwick Dunn we were going to let him go. You know, I had lunch with Warwick and you know, Warwick Dunn is he's one of the greatest men I've ever met. What he does, you know, what he does outside of football, not only being a great football player, and to tell him the first time I'd ever spoke with him, we're going to have to release you. And I'm sure he was smart enough to know what was coming when I said, hey, let's have lunch. But he is, you know, we had to do that. Telling Bob Whitfield, we're going to have to let you go. I mean, we had a bunch of guys that we had to get our cap space in line because we knew we were going to be rebuilding.
And now you made a comment about we lost 30% of the fan base, and you're not gonna say it, but see, me, I'm a lifelong fan. I can say this: y'all not fans if you left just because of a player. I get that we love players, but understand this: it's what we call logo business. If you're a fan, you support thick and thin. There's no such thing as bowing out when times get hard. It's just like a marriage. It's just like you might have some struggles, because we talk about real life struggles on here, because we have people that we talk to that have hit us up when they've been in hospital beds. Shout out to our guy William Avery. He called us from a hospital bed. And the thing is, you have to work through those things. You have to work through those hardships. And this is what tough times don't last. Tough people do.
Amen.
And for those that left when Vic was gone and they've been super critical of Matt, I'm gonna say it. I don't care. Matt's got, and I love Michael. Don't get it twisted. Michael will always be one of my favorite players. But Matt gave us consistent winning years. He took us to a Super Bowl. He's the only MVP in our organization ever. And it's been great players through our organization. Heck, William Andrews was robbed out of an MVP. Now, I'll sit here and say that. So when you look at it, you have to be consistent all the way around. And as you just said, you were talking to everybody from people that were selling tickets, the concession guys, the custodians. You have to be consistent. And that goes for us. We can't sit there and not be consistent as fans and say you're a fan, but you're not supporting them through bad times. That's why I respect Detroit fans and Cleveland fans. They were still selling out, and they were 0-16.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Coach. I had to get on my soapbox because we got people that it's kind of like it's a part-time job to be a Falcon fan for them. It's like, nah, it's a lifelong commitment for me. You cut me, I bleed red and black, whether it's Falcons or Dogs. So it's just
well said. And I'm sure that some people take it to heart when saying, hey, you're describing me, and maybe you changed them and they came back. But it's a very, very weird dynamic between the team and the city. And when you've got all your fans behind you, you got a better chance of being successful. And most of the successful teams have great fans. They're not fair weather fans. They're going to be there through thick and thin. And, it's the competition is so close in the National Football League that the difference between a 4-12 team and a 12-4 team can be this much. It's, it's not a big difference. And sometimes it doesn't go your way. And you've got to, you can try to identify what you could do better. And you've got to always do that and evaluate how you're going to try to be better, but you may not have control over it. And that's the thing I think that people got to understand. It is hard to win games in the National Football League. Week in and week out, it is hard. It's not easy. There's no patsies on that schedule.
And Coach, you said something a little while ago that I kind of want to harp on. You said that you want to take full accountability for what happened in the playoffs and the 4 losses that we had. But there's one thing that me and Coach Brandt talk about all the time, and that's execution. So whether the play is made or not, it's not always on the head coach or the assistants or the coordinators. If a player misses if they miss an assignment or whatever the case, that's not on the coach. That's on the player themselves. Looking back over the last couple of years with us missing the playoffs, the last 3 years, what were some things that you may have noticed that you could have either, fixed or kind of walked certain players through where we would have had an ability to get ourselves back into the playoffs if you were the head coach with this group of talent on this team?
Well, Coach, I've got to say I don't watch a whole lot of football, especially on TV. I really like to watch the tape, and I still have access to the tape. I don't watch a whole lot of it, but I do read, and that's probably the wrong thing to do. But you want to, I didn't read, when I was the head coach, I didn't read the sports page, and that was and I'm getting off the subject here, but I got to tell this real quickly. So when I got the job, Brian Billick told me, he says, Mike, he says, do not read the paper. He said, especially right now. I said, what do you mean? I just got the job. He says, yeah, they're going to be giving you the, all the prep, everything great. Hey, then you lose 2 in a row and it goes to 3. He says, you don't want to read that stuff. He said, and so that's one of the things that I did. But, it's about execution, but you never know as a coach. You always are second guessing yourself when things don't go right. And I think it's natural for you to say, well, I could have done something better. And what was it? Was it, I'd look back if it was on a play and it wasn't successful. I'd look back and very quickly go through the scripts and say, well, we ran it 4 times, okay, we check that off. Did we cover this 4 off the weak side? Well, yes, or maybe, but then you'll find something, you'll go, damn, I wish that I would have done that, so you try as a coach to always figure out a solution. I think that's just that's what most coaches do. And they don't want to blame your players. I mean, you don't. I mean, you want them to always feel like they have got your complete support and have them play as confidently as they can. But I get it. And then ultimately, as a head coach, and especially in the National Football League, it comes down to the decision to move on or from a head coach. It's based on your win-loss record, plain and simple. So that, I guess, I appreciate you saying no. The players play the game and they win the game, but you're the one that helps them get prepared and provide them with the information and sometimes the answers to the questions on the test before the test is taken. And those are the things that you try to do. I've always gone into every game thinking we're going to win this game. I mean, if you don't go into it with that mindset, you got no chance. So and I'm a positive person. I believe in positivity. I think the positive charges that your body gives off are so important, not only as a coach, but as a father, as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a friend. You want to give off that you want to give off those positive vibrations. And I think it goes a long way. And that's one of the things I've always tried to do. I have a saying, and I still use it. I've never had a bad day. I've had bad moments in the day, but at the end of the day, I try to find one of those good moments. So I go to sleep knowing that I didn't have a bad day. And I think you do that, you got a chance to stay as positive as you can as a husband, as a dad, as a coach. So
and now let's talk about let's before we get to the draft part of it, let's talk about the rivalry. One of the rivalries we hate. We can't stand them stinking Saints. And listen, my aunt is supporting me tonight, and I got some family members. They're Saints fans. They're from Louisiana. Yeah, I'm calling you out. Now, you're lucky I'm not gonna call you by name because I want my Christmas gift this year, so I'm gonna be nice. But Y'all still ain't worth 2 dead flies smashed, and I still say that to you. But what was the intensity like when you first got to Atlanta and you knew the history of that? You just came from Baltimore, where you came from a hard-hitting rivalry with the Steelers. That
Yep.
was a nasty rivalry.
Yep.
And then you also had the Colts, which was another rivalry because of the Colts leaving going to Indy back in '84. But what was it like when you got into one of the oldest rivalries with two of the worst franchises in the league at the time? What was that like when you stepped into this rivalry? And can you explain the intensity of this?
And I've had the opportunity to coach with 4 different teams, and I will tell you, playing in New Orleans as an Atlanta Falcon is probably the most intense games that we ever played. We knew that they didn't like us, we didn't like them. Their fans didn't like us. We didn't care for their fans. We knew that it was going to be one of those drag out. It's going to be a fist fight. There ain't no gloves. We're going to go try to punch them in the mouth. And I know that NFL doesn't like you to say that, but that's what it was. And hey, it was that way in the stands too. That's what I've heard. I've heard that it's, the Falcons and the Saints, they get it on the field, but the same thing's happening in the stands.
I got a scar on my hand right now because I happen to be, I was stationed with a guy. We were all, a few of us. My homeboy, good friend of mine, who, he helped me. He helped save my career when I was in the service at the time. So my boy, shout out to my brother Melvin. You suck because you're a Saints fan, but thank you for everything you've done for me in my life, though. I appreciate that. But you still suck as a football fan. But he'll tell the story. We were at a bar in Dutch Harbor, Alaska. If you've ever seen Deadliest Catch, that's Dutch Harbor, Alaska. It's in the middle of nowhere. And, Saints Falcons playing. We're in a port call. Now, he already knows I'm on chill. Guy comes over, drunk fisherman, wants to do all this. I'm like, look, man, I'm just trying to enjoy my food and sit here with my boy. Y'all sorry, Falcon fan, and da-da-da-da. It was when he threw the drink on me. My captain happened to be in the bar. He's a Cowboy fan, but he's also a Bama fan. He looks, he just sees me I just deck him. I looked at him, I said, Captain, I ain't have nothing to drink. Cut my hand. He said, you're restricted to the boat for the next 2 days. And we were leaving in 2 days. So I had a nice that's a little story. It's a little bit more to the story, but I'm keeping it PG. But yeah, I could have gotten booked for that, seriously booked for that. But shout out to Captain Thomas and shout out to my boy Melvin Nelson. He's watching. So he's laughing in the back because he remembers that night. But it's serious because we've seen videos. I'll say this, a couple of years ago when Arthur Smith first took over. We lose the game when Mariota fumbles the ball. We lose the game. There's a Falcons fan that gets jumped in our own stadium, and no Falcon fans help him. Oof. None. It's 12 Saints on one guy, and it went viral. And we were like, if that was Old Fulton County Stadium, heck, even the Georgia Dome, that wouldn't have took place. Because it's just certain cities. Like I live here in Philly. Now I went to watch the year we went to the Super Bowl. We played here. We got robbed out of that game. I'm in uniform. Now they don't mess with you if you're in uniform. Now if you're not in uniform, Philly fans are ruthless.
Yes, they are.
They are ruthless. And I tell people all the time. And Coach, you remember the old vet where they had the jail cell underneath?
Yes, they did.
It was they average at least 50 to 100 folks up under the jail cell in a game, just one game. And they have a judge on payroll in the stadium. So I tell people, I hate the fact that, and I'm just gonna call it like I said, Steve White said it. Falcon fans are the most whiniest fans, and I'll say it, we're soft. Some of us aren't, but most of our fan base, because we try to go to the club instead of the football games now. It's been like that for years. It's like, man, we've got to do better with supporting this team. When they're winning, everybody's loud, but when they're losing, it's like a ghost town. And I just think, like you were saying earlier, we've got to get better with supporting this team because we have pieces here. we have a lot of great things to look forward to. And regardless if we, it'll be lovely the day the organization hosts the Lombardi Trophy. We're gonna cheer for that. But here's my thing. You pretty much started the change of this organization because we had consistent wins under you. So without you coming to the Falcons, we don't have a spoiled taste in our mouth with playoffs because we know what it was like to go home early every year. So thank you. I'm literally speaking on half of the Falcon fans who came in here to support and just want to hear what you got. But let's talk draft. I'm gonna let Coach Brent jump on the quarterback side.
Let's talk draft. Let's do it.
All right. Coach Smith is the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons right now. Given our defensive situation, we had a top 10 defense last year. We're still under cap. We had a top 10 rushing team. Everybody knows our weaknesses were in our passing game and turning the ball over. So we go out and we get a free agent quarterback that has shown consistency. And we basically have a hired gun for 2 years. What direction do you go in the draft? Because in my opinion, I think there's 4 anchor positions that if you can get that are franchise guys, you have to get them. But I want to see what you have to say about it.
Well, let's first talk about what are your four anchor positions? Obviously, quarterback's one, right? And then on wide receiver.
No, I'm not a wide receiver guy.
Okay, coach. I got you.
I'm a left tackle. I'm a corner.
Well,
corner.
left tackle. I have left tackle, quarterback.
I'm an edge guy.
Yep, you got to have
guy in the corner. Those
there
4
you
positions,
go.
you can't pass up those 4 positions.
No, you're exactly right. I agree, and I'm a little different sometimes in terms of the order with regards on the offensive side because
that's fluid. Those 4 are fluid. Whatever you need,
they are based on based on who you got, and because you can always put a chipper there on if you got a tackle, got one less guy out in the route, but you can always do that. But who the Falcons, when they pick, they're like that right now on a lot of the mocks, and I think they're picking at number 9, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
8.
8. Okay, I thought it was 8 or 9. I haven't followed it real close. When you look at it, there's going to be 4 and maybe 5 quarterbacks, go not before us, the Falcons picking at 9, but there's going to be a chance at wide receiver, and I think there's the Florida State edge rusher is probably the guy that everybody's mocking to the Falcons. And, I don't think they don't need a wide receiver. There could be, there's some wide receivers that are probably rated higher, but I think they're going to go. And I know, hey, I tried to find one. We tried to bring in free agents, guys to rush the passer. They're hard to find. They really are. And hey, I've had some failures. The other regimes have had the same thing happen. You've got to have that, you've got to have that pressure. And I know there's some fans that are saying, well, let's move up and try to get one of those 4 quarterbacks. But the value that it's going to take to move up is probably cost prohibitive, unless you're going to mortgage 2 or 3 of your drafts. And, we did that a little bit when we did the Julio deal. And I'm glad
you had a proven quarterback already.
Yeah, but we had a proven quarterback at that time, and we knew we wanted to get another piece to add to Tony Gonzalez. And no disrespect to Harry Douglas and Michael Jenkins and Roddy White, but we went that way. So I think if they stay at 9, which is they're probably are, when they're picking in the top 10. They're going to probably take the only defensive player in the top 10, in my opinion. It probably comes down that the first 10, there's going to be 8 offensive players and 1 defensive player, and it's probably going to be the kid from Florida State to the Atlanta Falcons. And yes, I think the big thing with the quarterback is he going to be ready, and when is he going to be ready? But the return to play has been moved up with Achilles. They've gotten better and better. It's not the same thing as 3 years ago when you got a guy that's got an Achilles and he's gone for, maybe the whole season. And his was early enough that there's a good chance, a real good chance, that he'll be ready to go. It's just a matter of how long he's going to be able to work out with the team. But he's done it. He's done it for two different teams in the NFL, 9-year vet. I think he was a great pickup, but he's not the long-term. He's not the Matt Ryan return. He's not the Matt Ryan guy, but he's the guy that's going to be able to come in and distribute the ball to Bijan I like to call them the toys that the quarterbacks love to have. And you've got a bunch on offense. Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Those guys are really good players. And you've got to have that guy that can spin it and get it to him.
He's a hired gun for 2 years by the contract.
Yeah.
So we've argued in here, Coach, on many a days. We got one guy that likes Penix. We got me. I've already said I don't want any of these top dudes. I've said if it was anybody I'd take, it'd be Daniels. But for me, because of the how would I say it? It's very rare, like you say, it's very rare that you just hit it on the first round with a quarterback sometimes. We look at the last class that went through with Justin Fields in that class, all of them did not pan out. But I'll say this: if I go quarterback, and this is just me, I've already said if I'm gonna take one of those top guys, I'd take Daniels. But the guys that are sleepers that I've been speaking on for the longest, I said Jordan Travis, you trade back, you can get him. He's recovering the ankle. He was a Heisman candidate. Then you got Michael Pratt, who's just a scrappy gamer who can ball. And then you grew up watching HBCU football, being in Daytona. So I'm always gonna shout out my HBCU boys, no matter where they come from. So you got Darius Rickard out of North Carolina Central, who won the Celebration Bowl, and then we got Jeremy Musa out of Florida A&M. I know how you feel about the Rattlers, but the kid can spin it. But those are guys that I would take if we can't get any of those top guys. And a lot of people are like, "Hey, you sleeping on those dudes?" Like,
yeah, did the kid from North Carolina Central, did he get hurt at the All-Star game?
I think he did get a little banged up at the All-Star game.
Banged up.
He didn't kill him, but he got banged up.
Yeah, he did. I had him at the Hula Bowl. He was a great young man. I don't know if you know this, but I coached the Hula Bowl 2 out of the last 4 years. It's my way to get a football fix, and I go down, and it's in Orlando now, and I coach Billick coaches the other team, and we have a blast coaching it. But that kid from North Carolina Central, good young man. But if you look at the history of quarterbacks, this is in the first 3 rounds, there's only about a 25% hit rate, and it doesn't go up in the first round. I mean, in the first round, it's less than that. You're going to miss. You don't hit. And, when you miss, it sets you back for a long time. It really does. It's so that, and that's why it's become a quarterback driven league, and everybody gets so infatuated about got to have a quarterback. Well, instead of manufacturing somebody, why don't you wait for the real one to come and, and coach your way around it. And are you going to win and be dominant for when you have an inferior quarterback? Probably not. There's not any Baltimore Raven 2000 defenses out there anymore. The rules and the way they officiate makes it that way. It's not that because the defensive players aren't good. It's just the way that the game's officiated now. I mean, if you watch tape from 2000, if DB, if he put a hand on a guy and the ball was in the air and they were touching, the flag was coming out. the game is being officiated much differently. So back to the quarterback quandary that everybody gets in. Man, when you take one, you better be sure that that's the guy that you want, especially when you're picking in the first round. And when we took Matt, I said we better hit, because if we doing this the right way, we're never going to be picking in the top 10 again, because Matt Ryan, it turns out to be what we anticipate him to be. We're not. Hey, we're picking hopefully 32. But we're in the we're in the playoffs every year with a guy like Matt Ryan. Because
I would love to have Matt Ryan back right now as a rookie, getting ready to draft him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's tough, but I don't, maybe the Falcons take the D end, and then they put something together on the second day, and if one of the guys falls, if Penix falls, I don't think he's going to fall back to 42, or I don't know where you guys pick. I think it's around 42, I think, in the second round. Maybe you can put something together and move up. If there's one there, the Bo Nix guy, they say he's a second rounder, and I don't know much about those guys. I guess you don't like Bo.
Us SEC fans. Now, he played over in the Pac-12 and he exploded, but a lot of us watched him for three and a half, almost 4 years, and there's something where he can have great games, and then he could just turn the ball over like 5 or 6 times in a game. And being a head coach, turning over the ball is something that you just don't do. Nope. And he had a bad habit of it, and that was why he lost his job at Auburn, and he had to go to Oregon. Now, he did better at Oregon, thank God for his sake. But and the other thing I was going to talk to you about outside of the quarterback, because everybody beats the quarterback with a dead horse. I'm a defensive guy. I speak quarterbacks, but I can only do it for so long. But I'm going to speak on the cornerback spot, because we got Jerry Gray, who's one of the legendary coaches in the league, is a defensive mind, but people forget about how good he was as a DB, and a lot of guys didn't see him play unless they grew up in the 80s, early 90s like myself. And you look at what he's done and how he's affected the secondary of Atlanta, because Atlanta had one of the most physical secondaries since the days that you were here. And you didn't have that physicality. And no disrespect to Dean Pease, because he got his Super Bowl ring and he's a well-respected coach. But we didn't have that when Dean Pease was here. When Jerry Gray came here, it was a totally different attitude, totally different makeup. And there's a guy out right now that could possibly be an undrafted guy that reminds me of a Brent Grimes that was here in Atlanta. His name is Willie Drew out of Virginia State, another HBCU guy. Yeah. Even Steve Weiss talked about him. He said he's going to be a guy that you can get in the lower rounds, and Atlanta normally builds its great players in the lower rounds, and it's history of that. And you look at, I said TJ Tampa, if I'm going to go corner first round, I'm going TJ Tampa. I've already said that. That's my guy. But and I look at it, and you're an old school linebacker. We also need help with depth in the linebacking core. It's not the fact that the starters are bad. We need depth so we can have a rotation like you had when we were here. So addressing the defense, and you look at Ryan Nielsen's left to go to Jacksonville. You have Jerry Gray. You're bringing in a new guy, Jimmy Lake. Now, we were great with using a 4-3. How do you see Atlanta being able to keep the same type of pressure they did last year as a top defense with a 3-4 defense? And Grady's coming back off of injury, by the way.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big plus for the Falcons, having him back. I think this 3-4, 4-3 conversation that people are having, it really is. It's not as important as you think. Most of the game is played with 5 or 6 defensive backs. The other trend is that the 5 down looks that you get, basically the old 46 defense that Buddy Ryan made famous with the Chicago Bears. And, that's what you got to concern yourself with. Basing out of a 3-4, you're calling a guy a outside linebacker, but, is Micah Parsons, is he an outside linebacker or is he a defensive end?
Yes.
If he's in a 3-4, you're saying he's a outside linebacker, but he really rushes the quarterback. So I think what you've got to really look at is what technique are you looking for? Are you looking for a guy that can go up the field and whether you're based with an odd front, 3-4, but when you're in a 3-4, probably those two outside linebackers most of the time are going to be rushing, and you're going to cover the inner part of the offensive formation over the center and guards and cover it up, so everybody's got one-on-ones. And I just think that conversation of whether you're a 3-4, you're based out of a 3-4, nobody runs a true 3-4 anymore. You're going to line up and have 5, 6, or 7 DBs in the ball game, because if you don't, you're going to get cut up and have a hard time slowing down the wide receiver groups that are presented. And as we mentioned earlier, quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver. Those are the three groups. Well, it doesn't matter if you're in a 3-4 or a 4-3, you're going to have five or six DBs out there on the field. Sometimes you're going to have 7, and that 7th linebacker is going to line up as a dime backer. And and I agree, Jerry Gray's he's a fantastic coach, and so is Coach Lake. Raheem has gotten a good group of guys together, guys that he knows. He knows Atlanta. He knows the organization. He knows the city. I think he's going to be a very successful coach.
And Coach, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because my next question was actually going to be about Coach Lake. Coming from the college ranks back to the NFL, how do you think his transition is going to be as far as how it was back in the college days of you being able to draft the guys you want versus having to, coach of guys that you really don't have knowledge of or really have the ability to really bring in and really can't think of the word right now, but recruiting them to bring them into your system, so that way you kind of have an advantage of how you want to run that defense.
Yeah, and I think what's happened is the new modern NFL is much closer to the college game than it's ever been. It's usually the trends go from the top down, and what's happened is so many teams have been running this spread offense, and now there's so many teams. There's you lost all the drop back quarterbacks, and now you got the Patrick Mahomes and all the guys that can be be that extra guy that has to be accounted for in the run. So it's really more like in the NFL is more like college ball right now than it has ever been. And it's actually started in college and has moved to the NFL, which makes sense because that's the team, that's the guys that are going to be playing the next generation of NFL players are the college guys. And it used to be the other way. The NFL went down, what was going on in the NFL went down to college, but they've come up with this spread offense and where you have to account for the quarterback. I mean, for defensive guys, it's tough. It is difficult to defend. That's why the games are like they are. There's no 10-3 games anymore. It's wide open, and that's why running backs have been devalued.
Coach, I got a question for you. Did you ever think that in the NFL you would be coaching a quarterback to read grass lanes or running the read option?
I thought that would never happen.
I mean, when you played in college, when they were running the wishbones and running the veer and stuff like that, and reading grass lanes, people don't even know what that is anymore.
No, they don't.
And I mean, and it's amazing. And they're going back and they're running the same offense. All they're doing is putting it in the shotgun and running the single wing, and that's all they're doing. It's this.
Yeah.
This is the '70s offense reinvented. Is what it is, and
absolutely-
people
it
have
absolutely
no idea
is.
what they're looking at.
Yeah,
And the
and you know,
3-4 defense and the 4-3, all they're doing now is they're playing the underfront like they used to.
Yep.
It's a half man to the weak side is all they're doing. It's crazy.
yeah, no, and
Yeah.
and you know, Coach, you know, there's only so many things you can do with 11 people. You can't really, and the game's been played for a long time, and the rules, you know, the rules are set where we can't go back to the single wing if we could. Or the flying wedge, excuse me. You could do the single wing with you could have 7 men on the line of scrimmage, but it's very cyclical now in terms of what's going through the league. And I think we're going to see more and more athletic quarterbacks that you're going to have to account for, because that's what they're doing at the high school level. That's what they're doing at the college level. And it's definitely becoming the predominant offensive scheme in the National Football League. It really, it really has.
I guarantee you, if you took a high school kid right now and told him to do a 7-step drop, he would literally look at you like you had 3 eyes.
That's right.
Hey, say, I
want me to punt the ball from that position?
And then pitch and then throw. And they would look at you like, you want me to do what? Yeah. And the old days of 1-2-3 throw now and the quick game and stuff, and getting out, it's all gone.
It is.
It's all gone.
It is. And you know, and I don't mean this as a bang on the offensive guys. They think when you have the quarterback as a potential runner, that they got the answers to everything, because they always feel like they've got one more than you've got. And you know, it takes some time for the defenses to catch up, but they'll catch up. But then, you know, a missed tackle, and you know, when you're accounting for everybody, a missed tackle, there's nobody back there usually that's going to be able to stop them if you're playing, if you're not playing a single high defense.
Now, you're going to see a lot of zone defense going forward.
Now, Coach, I got one more thing to throw at you before we let you go tonight. Now, we got a little debate going in the chat right now, because you guys were speaking on the quarterbacks. Everybody is so quick to throw Vic out there. I get it. But there was a guy before Michael Vick who was a little bit more accurate and just as fast. He was just bigger. People keep forgetting about Randall Cunningham. Yeah, I'm calling you out, Clayton Murray. I know that's my boy. He followed us in the other group, but I got to call you out, dog. You got to understand, man. Randall did it at a different time where it was three downs in a cloud of dust when he was doing this. Now, I love Michael Vick. Trust me, that's my guy. But you have to understand, Randall was a different animal when he came out. No one knew what to do with him in his Philadelphia days. And he used to make some of the best defenses look horrible. Horrible. You're talking about the 85 Bears. You're talking about the New York Giants with Lawrence Taylor. Remember this. If you don't remember this, go back and go on YouTube, and I want you to go look at the Monday night game where he took a shot in the red zone and delivered a touchdown pass. Remember, Carl Banks hit him. Banks got a good shot off of it. And they called him, and Merrill Reese, legendary Philadelphia voice, called Randall Plastic Man because he bounced up, delivered a touchdown pass. And he could throw a strawberry through a battleship. That's how strong his arm was. So, and then even before Randall, you had Fran Tarkenton who was doing it. And before him, you had Jefferson Street Joe Gilliam, who was nice at it. But he played traditional pocket, but he could run. But we're not gonna get into a history lesson in here because it'll go on. But all I'm saying is, Coach, out of all the quarterbacks that you've seen through your time of playing ball, or even from your younger days all the way up until now, and you got to see athletic quarterbacks, who is the best that you got to see?
Oh gosh. Well, I can't say without a doubt one guy was different than the others, but we had to defend in Baltimore. I remember we had to defend. We came in down and played in 2000 in a preseason game, and you know, he made us. Hey, he made us. When I say made us, that defensive staff, which had Marvin Lewis as the defensive coordinator, Rex Ryan was the D-line coach, uh, uh, Jack Del Rio was the linebacker coach. You talk about a staff meeting after that game in the preseason with what went on. It was like, oh my God, we got to get some answers for this, and so it's Michael Vick was he was the first quarterback that really took the ball. He and Randall Cunningham, and Randall played at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The thing that Randall had was, you mentioned it, he had an arm that could he could throw the ball 75 yards in the air. And he's a guy, the thing I think that was probably the negative about him is he had a real long delivery. He wasn't one of those guys that could flick it. But I think, the guy that Atlanta saw for so many years, Michael Vick, is the guy that probably changed things.
Yep.
He
really, track star,
he really did. But Randall was the precursor for him. I don't think there's any doubt.
And your brother-in-law got to coach him in Minnesota. Now, I'm not gonna say too much because we'd love to have Coach Billick on here, and I don't want to burn a bridge because I know that brings back bad memories with that '98 team and that. God, as a kid coming up watching that and watching the Falcons in that game, we went in there, we won. The Falcons took that game.
They did, they absolutely did, and nobody thought they could. I mean, nope. I don't think Brian Billick would have got the Ravens job if they would have won that game. They would have probably gone on and got somebody wouldn't wait. So there was a consolation for personally for Coach Billick, but that was a tough one, man. That was a tough one. Good one.
Falcon fans, it wasn't until we got to Elway. That one hurt. And what made it worse for us Georgia Bulldog fans, it was a Bulldog that ran all over us with Terrell Davis. That's what hurt.
Yeah, TD now, he could run. Woo. He could run.
He's my favorite Georgia. I'm going to be honest with you. There's going to be a lot of people like, oh, you're not. No, look, my godfather played with Herschel Walker. We had him on the show. But TD is my favorite Georgia running back. It's a special play. For me, he is my favorite Georgia running back because I know what he went through. And for him to get to the NFL and play 6 years and get a gold jacket and rush for 2,000 yards in the season, league MVP, I'm not going to get into his accolades, but it's a small club of 2,000 yards rushing. But also, rest in peace to Mr. Orenthal, James Simpson, O.J. Simpson. We're not going to get into the things that happened to him off the field. We recognizing him as a football player on this show because 14 games to get 2,003 yards in that time, rough.
Yeah,
when everybody knew you were running, there was no passing going on.
And so gotta Heisman Trophy winner and first 2,000-yard rusher in NFL history. Hey, outside of his legal issues and things of that sort, the man was one of the greatest football players to ever play.
You can't take that away from him.
Nope.
Nope. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for coming on, Coach. We definitely appreciate it. And Coach McGriff, thank you for allowing us to speak to one of your comrades. We definitely appreciate it, Coach. Thank you for coming on and talking to us tonight.
Well, guys, I enjoyed it. I got my football fix. I know that the people there in Atlanta are going to get out and support the Falcons, whatever they do in the draft. And like you said earlier, the true fan is there through thick and thin. And, some people think it's thin right now. I don't think it's as thin as it really is. And I think they're just a play away from winning the division. They're really close.
And we gotta have. And the thing is, Coach, we gotta have you to come back on here, probably during the season if you get some time, just to chop it up with you because we definitely love talking football on here, and we love having Falcon greats, because Terrence Mathis, you know, he was supposed to come back, but now he's the head coach at Morehouse now. It's going to be a little bit harder to get him on. Maybe in the offseason we'll be able to.
Yeah. And that's great for Terrence. I know he wants to get in coaching. He's running his own program, and there's nothing like running your own program. As coaches, we all aspire to be the head man, and I wish him the best of luck, because he was a good player. I didn't have any opportunity to coach him, but I watched him and tried to defend him. He was a good one. And guys, I've really enjoyed it. Great, a fun 90 minutes talking ball, chopping it up. And, I still have a soft spot in my heart for ATL. I think the fans were great. They treated me well. And my family and I enjoyed the heck out of our time there in Atlanta.
Coach,
you're always going to be a legend. You're always going to be a legend in Falcons history, because you were the first winningest coach that we had, and you gave us consistent winning seasons, and we're all grateful for that. So, and outside of you and Dan Reeves, best coaches we ever had. So we definitely appreciate you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for coming on,
and we definitely look forward to possibly having you on again for the future. Maybe after we get that Lombardi, or even during the season.
Well, that'd be great. I'll get my football fix. I enjoyed it, guys. And coaches, good luck with your seasons. Coach Cam and Coach Grant, thank you. Good luck.
Hey, you get Coach down to Tennessee and you want to go fishing, hit me up. We'll go.
We'll do. Hey, same thing if you're over here in East Tennessee. Hey, yeah. I can't turn down a golf game or a fishing trip.
There we go. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Coach. So that was the legendary Coach Mike Smith in the building. We definitely appreciate Coach for coming on tonight. We thank you guys for viewing. But before y'all get out of here, man, y'all not just going to come in here, drink up all the Kool-Aid, eat up all the chicken, eat up all the pig feet. Y'all not going to do it. I'm having my Pops moment from Friday. Before you close that refrigerator door and hit that X button, hit that like and subscribe button for us. Because, as I said before, we're going to continue to keep bringing some heavy hitters through the Birdcage. So if you want these heavy hitters to come through, you go ahead and show us a little love. We're going to keep showing you guys love. So without further ado, thank you, Coach Brandt. Thank you, Coach Cam, for coming on tonight, gentlemen. And we definitely appreciate all of you who came in here. Listen, a lot of hard times, change of season, a lot of folks going through some things. Just remember, always keep your head up, always pray, and keep God first, because no matter how bad things are going at this time, God always got you, because you don't know what people are going through. And us having Coach Smith into the Birdcage tonight really brought a lot of folks happiness tonight. So with that, I'm just glad me and the magnificent Birdcage crew and Coach McGriff, we were able to have this for you Falcon fans. So please, please, please come back, check us out, and we definitely love you. We'll see you next Thursday at 8 p.m.